Life begins the moment you step out of your comfort zone. Although this idea may seem cliche, it really holds true in the case of my sister. As a senior in high school, my sister dared to stray away from the college application process, and instead she planned a year of travel. She had no desire to go to college before she experienced the world and decided for herself what she wanted to do with her life. This decision to go on a gap year has forever changed her, and I am very excited for her to share with us some of the experience she has had since her graduation from Episcopal in 2008. Please stand to greet my sister, Anna Swanson.
Thank you. So, what exactly do you do with an Africana Studies major? Without fail, I'm confronted with this question almost every time I meet someone new. My go-to answer these days? Well, I'm planning on moving to Africa and saving the world. A bit sarcastic, but effective. The honest answer is, I don't really know. All I know is I've been really lucky to find something I love studying, Africa and South Africa in particular, and I went with it. I should be a senior this year, graduating in May, but my path has been a bit different. It started back in my own days at this fine academy. I was one of the exchange students to Australia summer after sophomore year, and went to Tanzania with my mom and the other EA kids the summer after my junior year. By senior year, to all of the modern language department's horror, I am sure, I was apparently not content with the 3-year single language commitment and was taking French, Spanish, and Mandarin. I had stumbled upon something new and intriguing, traveling and other cultures. My summers abroad had broadened my horizons significantly, but if anything, they left me wanting more. So I did something a bit unusual, something that almost everyone questioned. But, being my stubborn self, I was convinced it would be worthwhile. The year after I graduated Episcopal, 2 of my fellow EA alums, Quinn Libson and Mia Kent, and I decided to travel and volunteer for a year before heading to college. We all went slightly different places, but with a common goal: to learn something new about and experience a larger world. My adventures took me into the jungle of Peru, where I worked on a reserve in conservation. Then to a small village near Machu Picchu, where I taught English to middle and high schoolers. Then across the Atlantic into the bush of the Botswanan wild for another conservation project. To the streets of Cape Town, South Africa, where I worked in a daycare. And finally, throughout Senegal, West Africa, where I taught English to adult learners and French to kindergartners. In each of these places, my situation was a bit different. In the wilderness, working on the conservation projects, I lived in volunteer-made cabins, tents, and little stone shelters with other volunteers from around the globe. In the towns and cities, I lived with host families of incredible diversity. They were Christian, Muslim, Peruvian, Senegalese, Cape Townian, colored, African, Andean, French-speaking, Spanish-speaking, and Afrikaans-speaking. I met people from all over the world with different stories, different backgrounds, and different goals. I skydived over Table Mountain, hiked Wainu Picchu, swam in piranha-infested water, drove for over 42 hours in a 7-person car with no air conditioning and 106-degree heat. I got my hair braided into 142 braids down to my butt, ate a whole guinea pig, dove with great white sharks, and walked by moonlight only through the African bush. It was the experience of a lifetime. But most importantly, I learned. Some learning was obvious. nature walks with our leaders in the jungle taught me all the complexities of the jungle species and how it worked. Cab drivers, host families, and the students that I worked with all helped me to improve my Spanish and French, constantly correcting me and developing my vocabulary. Tours of historical sites and museums in Cape Town taught me about the nation's horrifying history of apartheid and the civil rights-like movements against it. But some of the learning was a bit less direct and only evident upon reflection. I had to learn how to be responsible, to navigate airports, trains, work assignments, and tricky situations by myself. Africa time taught me to learn patience. Being a 2-hour boat ride from the nearest village with no electricity taught me to enjoy simplicity. In Senegal, where 90% are Muslim and 100% are African, I learned what it felt like to be a minority, constantly being picked out, treated differently, and taken advantage of. It wasn't always fun and easy. Handling a room full of screaming kids who don't speak your language can be a bit intimidating. Having to be picked up and driven from a chosen location because your walking path to work has suddenly become too dangerous can be a bit scary. But I can't tell you how rewarding it feels to be absolutely exhausted, physically and mentally, after a whole day of working and speaking with other people in another language. Or the sheer pride you feel after you've returned home to a host mother's approval after finally bargaining down in the market from the white people's price to the locals' price. Living with all these different host families and meeting so many people from all over the world constantly forced me to challenge previous ideas. Every day, I learned something new about a place, a person, or a part of society I didn't know before. Every day, something pushed me out of my comfort zone and forced me to learn something about myself or about others. I began to learn and understand parts of the world I never knew, and I was hooked. I fell in love particularly with South Africa. Its complexities challenged me. Its beautiful facade, but deep-seated sadness and inequality perplexed me. I wanted to know more, to know the country and its people better, so I vowed to go back. But first, I had to go to college. So I returned home and started at the College of William & Mary in Virginia. My first semester, I took a Modern History of South Africa course, and by the time second semester had rolled around, I was already planning my study abroad and had declared myself an Africana Studies major. I dove into South Africa's history, reading novels, Nelson Mandela's biography, which is not short, and watched movies and read the news. I wanted my second experience in South Africa to be even more meaningful. This past semester, as I promised myself, I began at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. By the time I had returned there, South Africa had earned a very special place in my heart as the most beautiful, inspirational country in Africa. My memories of anything negative from my gap year were quickly shaded over with images of the Rainbow Nation, a place where people had moved so swiftly from the utmost challenge of oppression to freedom, change, and democracy, and happiness. Of course there were problems, but everyone was so positive. How could it matter? As soon as I started university, I realized how untrue this was. I decided I wanted to get to know the community, or at least part of it, a little bit better. I went in search of a volunteer position or internship that would place me in the heart of somewhere different, and stumbled upon one through a program called SAEP. There, I met a woman named Indra who asked me if I'd like to help her start a photography program. I jumped on the idea, even though the last time I formally had any photography experience was in this very school with Mr. Collins. But I thought, hey, how hard can it be? My first Monday, I was driven deep into a township called Philippi and dropped in a class of 7 students with just myself, my camera, and a list of photography vocabulary. The students were all Xhosa speaking, yes, that's the language with the clicks, but could understand a bit of my English if I spoke slowly. They were between the ages of 17 and 20, and all but one had worked a camera, or had never worked a camera. They lived in what is called a township, what most would call a shantytown or a slum, consisting of scrap iron houses, dirt roads, stolen electricity, and the occasional porta potty. The townships are remnants of apartheid. They are the informal housing outside the city where thousands of blacks were forced to live, often by forced removal from their homes closer to the city, by apartheid laws laying racial claim over certain areas. They went to a school with not a single white person, nor anyone of any other tribe or race, for that matter, and I was the first American that they had ever met. A particular incident stands out in my mind where I realized the importance of our interactions. My students and a bunch of the other art program students had taken a field trip to the National Art Museum of Cape Town to see a photography exhibit. We were waiting outside for the other van to come pick us up afterwards, and I started chatting with one of the girls. She asked me what I was doing that weekend, and I said I was probably going to Mazzoli's. It's a restaurant in a black township where you buy your meat at the deli next door, they grill it, and you eat it with your hands and then dance the afternoon away with a DJ. She asked me why. I said, I don't know, it's fun. She said, shocked, so you have black friends? And I said, yes, I have black and white friends and friends from all over. Then she got really quiet for a moment and finally got up the courage to say, I wish I had a white friend. I don't know a single one, except for you. You want to be my white friend? This struck me. It was interactions like these with my photography students and with my fellow students at UCT when South Africa crept up on me and began testing my faith in its success. Was it possible for a country with such a violent history to proceed out of it with no consequences? How could the country move past the racism when students like my own never even had contact with other races? Why were the students at UCT still so vocal about apartheid and racism when they hadn't experienced it firsthand and they currently lived in a democratic nation? I came home crying more than once, feeling ashamed and heartbroken at the violence and oppression that was attached with my skin color and the ignorance that was attached with my accent and nationality. I began to question my ability to teach the students photography when what they saw and what I saw in their community were so different. I was frustrated that the country wasn't the positive rainbow nation that I thought it once was, and pessimistic about my ability to change anything. But always, just when I thought I would give up, there were moments of hope. Moments when I bonded over a South African classmate over similar book or movie taste. Times when I was goofing off with my students, showing them my Swanson dance moves, and laughing even though they could hardly understand the lyrics of my songs, and I could definitely not understand the lyrics of theirs. I know this is going to sound really cliche, but get ready. I realized one of the most important changes I could make was to actually be the change I wanted to see in South Africa. It was these little exchanges that showed my students that I was as much their teacher as their equal. The comments and discussions in my classes where I challenged my South African classmates to discard their stereotypes of me as a white American. I may not have solved all the problems in their community. In fact, I didn't. But I did make a change in their world. That's the thing about creating change. It's not always huge. It's not always saving the world, as I like to say. Sometimes it's just making a positive difference in a few people's lives. There's a quote by Jane Goodall that I really like and think goes along well with the chapel theme. She says, "Only if we understand can we care. Only if we care will we help. Only if we help shall we all be saved." The whole point of me telling you all this is that these experiences in South Africa and on my gap year helped me to do exactly this: to understand, to care, and to help. According to Jane's quote, the first part of being the change and ultimately helping is understanding. For some, this is years and years of school and books and lectures and speeches and conferences. But for me, this is experiencing and exploring. It means taking every opportunity you have to challenge yourself, branch out, and expand your mind. To leave behind your expectations and biases and look at something in a new way. For me, it meant traveling the world and learning and experiencing other cultures. However, it also meant beginning to understand myself. Understanding and learning my interests, fears, stereotypes, areas where I needed to improve, and areas where I had developed. By doing this, I have begun, and you will begin, to care. Beginning to understand the country of South Africa and the situation of most of its population a bit more inspired me. I developed a passion for this place that constantly confused and frustrated and inspired me. This passion was the only way that I could help. It drove me to learn more, do more, and not give up. Because I wanted so badly to understand and be a part of the community, I kept working even after I would come home crying, feeling judged and belittled just for the color of my skin and my accent. And I'd like to think I helped a little. In the end, I did set up a very successful photography program, which hopefully will be working with the Cape Town School of Photography students next year. But to me, the biggest positive change I made was with the students. I developed a friendship and relationship with them that helped them unravel the many stereotypes of race, nationality, and class they never had to confront before. If I leave you with one thing today, I want to encourage you not just to be the change, but first, to find it. Learn and experience. The school has so many opportunities available to you all. Take advantage of them. Keep searching and don't settle for something you feel average about. Find something you're passionate about. If you keep exploring, as I have, your passion just may find you. It's something that challenges you and forces you out of your comfort zone, but at the same time, something that is rewarding and that you feel good about. It's taken me a long time and many, many experiences to even start to begin to know where my future lies. And trust me, I'm still barely there. But for now, I know where my passion lies, and that's enough for me to feel hopeful that someday, somewhere, I'll make a change. Thank you.